Okay, let's take a look at section C, which is um, materials, processes, and ideas. Sorry about that. So for this sustained investigation, the student said that their question driving the sustained investigation asks to what degree the bad news dominating the headlines affects my mental health. I explored the feelings of desensitization, equanimity, empathy, fear, anxiety, and stress. I wondered how to represent my emotions, not only through subject matter, but also through the formal elements of my work. I began by creating a surrealistic vision by placing the human figure in relation to newspapers. I experimented with contrast, emphasis, color, line, pattern in order to illustrate an emotional state of mind. So just to go over, section A and B as well. So this is a very clearly written sustained investigation. We know what she's trying to do. And we know that she went through some sort of revision because she said, I began by, and then she said, I experimented with. So she's using language that shows clear evidence that segment A and segment B were addressed. But we're interested in materials, processes, and ideas this time. So take a look at each of the pieces and what she talks about as far as her materials, processes, and ideas. So for her materials for this one, it's paper, colored pencils, and pen. The processes are creating a mind map for desensitization, what colors, feelings, and facial expressions can be used. So this is a process image from her sketchbook. And then here's one of her pieces. This is created using Procreate. The processes are creating a digital realistic self-portrait, pastel color palette, neutral calm facial expression. And then here's the final piece. So these two are literally the process images, and the third is the actual artwork. So here, the materials are newspaper, camera, Procreate app, and printing paper. The processes were photo newspapers focused on the subject, colors, composition, digital portrait, low opacity on top. And then again, she does that for her other pieces. Here's her inspiration page from her sketchbook. Here's the digital work, and here is the final piece. Here's the sketchbook page, and here is the final piece that was created based off of the sketchbook page and the inspiration images. Sketchbook page, inspiration, and development, final piece. Scroll all the way down here. Okay, so here's her score rationale. The student's inquiry examines the effects of the constant bombardment of negative news on their mental health. Visual relationships among the materials, the processes, and the ideas are clearly evident, and they're very successfully integrated. The concept of conveying an emotional state of mind guides the use of design elements and principles. The juxtaposition, I love that word, of the self-portrait and collaged newspaper articles in image 3 represents an intentional selection and manipulation of materials to communicate the relentless barrage of negative news. A deliberate choice of pastel colors for the portrait represents neutrality and peacefulness as a means of self-preservation. Adjustments to the portrait's opacity convey internalized news. In image 15, the approach is similar to that in image 3, but the idea was to epitomize or represent an anxious figure drowning in the news. And in image 6, the headline text wrapping around the bullet is like the constant stream often seen at the bottom of television news channels. It visually supports the stated metaphor shot of news or the idea of a news bulletin. So we have very clear relation between the materials, the media that she's using, with the processes, how she's putting these pieces together, and the idea behind her investigation. So let's take a look at a score of 1. So this response to the question that guided my sustained investigation is, how can I capture abstract art using digital photography? I took photographs of walls and surfaces, looking for subtle markings on the surface. I started by looking at walls and then continued to take photographs on the floors. So they're trying to talk about some sort of process that changed over time, but it's not very clear. Such emphasizing little markings or lines on the walls. I felt that this would bring out the best designs. I used negative space to my advantage to make my design interesting and having a subtle focal point in all of my abstract images. Okay, you can take a look at the images if you want to, but we're not as much interested in the images as we are about the materials. So materials obviously are digital photography. For processes, They just have the image above as emphasis and contrast. That's not really a process. That's an element of art. So the process would be probably, you know, edited digital photography or something in that nature. Anyway, let's go down and see what the score rationale for this one is. Scrolling. There we go. Okay, so this got in row C a score of 1 for materials, process, and ideas, and this is why. There is little to no evidence of visual relationship among the materials, processes, or ideas in these works. While the student's vision is stated as to capture abstract art with photographs of walls and floors, the method of photographing surfaces from above for emphasis is repetitive throughout all of the images. There's no revision for one. So this is a good example of how not to show revision, experimentation, or exploration of an idea over time. Images 2, 6, 9, 11, 14, and 15 appear similar to images 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, and 12 as altered compositions, which merely crop or change the image's angle. They didn't even take new images. They just took the same image and cropped it differently and then presented that as a brand new piece. No, you can't do that. Visual relationships among materials, processes, and ideas might have been more thoroughly evident if the student had manipulated the images further to provide more contrast or by enhancing the subtle details.